What's up, everybody? It's Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we're here with some NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings for the big Monday Night Football matchup between the Ravens and the Chiefs. Single game showdown slate. In this video, we're going to talk about some top plays and then most importantly, lineup strategies for FanDuel and DraftKings low risk and high risk contests. Before we get started though, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. That way you get access to all of our videos the second that they are released. Give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the video. The more thumbs ups that we get, we know that we want to continue making these videos, so it helps us out, helps you out. And then any questions you have about this slate, you can either hop in our Discord channel, instructions on how to join that is in the description below, or you can just hop in the comment section and we'll answer them before the slate locks tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, this slate is interesting. $1 million to first on DraftKings, $1 million to first on FanDuel, and the strategies couldn't be any different if you're trying to win the top prize on each site. So let's start with the game total here and the spread. Baltimore 3.5 point favorites. The totals actually increased a bit here. Let's go over to our Occupy model for a second. OccupyFantasy.com ranks every player on the single game slate for FanDuel and DraftKings. We see that the totals actually moved up a point, 54.5. I guess I have to scroll to the right here so you can see, but 54.5 point total move. Um, the I know it's a public heavy game here, and that there's going to be a lot of over bets by the public on a Monday Night Football matchup between the Chiefs and the Ravens. But again, 54.5 point total. We get a lot of leverage if this game ends up going under the total. If we end up with a 60, 70 point game, we'll see a lot of ties at the top more than likely. So if you're playing tournaments, you probably want to root for an under game script. If we look at unique lineups that have won the DraftKings Big GPP since the beginning of 2018, 70% of the unique winners, that means no one else tied with them, it was one lineup that got first place. 70% of those unique lineups were a result of the game going under the total. So super interesting. All right. So we see we got a big 54.5 point total. Baltimore a slight favorite. Let's go back to DraftKings here. And let's talk about low risk contests. If you've read our showdown strategy guide, if you haven't, go get it. OccupyFantasy.com. 15 chapters of how to tackle showdown contests with back tested research. Tons of great data. In there, we have a low risk contest section. That's your 50-50s, your double ups, your head to heads, how to build high floor lineups. If you read that section in depth, you know that we like to get in 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs into our low risk lineups in an effort to lock up all the scoring, give us a really high floor. And this has a great success rate. And we can do this tonight on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So obviously, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes are the easy quarterback plays. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the bell cow back for the Chiefs. And then some people may be scared off of Mark Ingram as the lead back for the Ravens, but he's actually dominated opportunities, all things considered. Yes, J.K. Dobbins has gotten his touches, Gus Edwards has gotten his touches, but Mark Ingram has led the team in backfield touches, both in weeks 1 and 2. He's dominated red zone opportunities. He's had 7 carries plus targets. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins have combined for just 3. And if you look at usage in the passing game, Mark Ingram's got 3 targets, Dobbins has 1, Edwards has 0. And in a game like this, we expect Ingram to continue to be the lead dog, and he makes sense in low risk contests is the most likely to get work in the Ravens backfield. Now, if you try to get all 4 of these guys, let's go to the MVP spot here. If we try to get all 4 of these guys with Lamar Jackson, who projects for the most raw total points on the slate, if we try to get him and then Clyde and then Ingram, that leaves us with 1950 per player. Not a great low risk lineup start. If we swap these two, let's just say we put in Edwards-Helaire, who's going to be very popular at his depressed price tag. That leaves us 3250. Decent, but the kickers and defense that we'd like to fit in, there's only one below that number, so that makes it difficult. More than likely, your best bet here, and we like to use this approach, a little secret here, to get high floor, low risk showdown lineups, especially on DraftKings, where you don't need the highest scoring player because of the salary multiplier at the captain spot. You can put all 4 of these guys in the flex and Ingram, and now we have 5,200 left per player, and we get our role player, kickers, defenses to fill in the rest. Now we have a super high floor lineup with 6 players that are guaranteed to get points. So it's a really good approach. That's probably the best bet on DraftKings tonight. Now, if we hop over to FanDuel, again, because there's no salary multiplier, you have to have the highest scoring player. And it's tough, but thanks to the pricing, Mark Ingram has a depressed price tag, just 10K on FanDuel. We expect him to be pretty popular tonight in all contest types because of that price tag and his touchdown probabilities. That gives us 5K left with one spot. We can punt the last spot. We get a high floor lineup. Seems pretty easy. Now, high risk contest, which is probably why you tuned into this video. High risk contest, we've had this question a lot in our comments. We detail all the contest types in our ultimate guide, our 19 chapter DFS ebook, so go read that if you haven't. But when we say high risk contests, we mean contests that have exponential payouts. A small portion of the field gets paid out, and they're top heavy dollars to be made. So first place makes much more than 10th place, makes much more than 100th place, and you don't get paid outside the top 20, 25%. So for these contest types, we have to find the optimal lineup usually, unless we're playing smaller contests, and we have to go for broke. So, and tonight it's going to depend on which site you're on, and the strategies are going to vary dramatically. Since we're on FanDuel, we'll start with FanDuel. Expect Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Let's go to our occupied model. We do have projected ownership up. If we sort by FanDuel MVP percentage, yes, that's correct. And this is what happened when these two teams played last year in week 3. 53% MVP projected from Lamar Jackson. Mahomes, 36%. Yes, that's 89 to 90% total MVP for the two quarterbacks. It's going to happen. Unless you're playing the biggest contest, the $1 million contest, don't even think about it. Just get one of these two guys into your MVP spot. If you're playing the $1 million contest, there's some arguments for Clyde Edwards-Helaire in case he gets all the touchdowns for Kansas City somehow. There's arguments for Mark Ingram. He was actually the optimal MVP in this game last year. Scored 3 touchdowns on the ground. Could happen again. But as you see, these top 4 are your MVP options with heavy leaning on Lamar or Mahomes. And if you're making just one lineup, just go with Lamar or Mahomes. And then you have to get different. And how do you get different? It's leaving salary on the table. We talk about this in depth in the strategy guide too, the Showdown strategy guide. Here's a little nugget for you. When the Ravens played the Titans in the divisional round matchup in the playoffs last year, we took a look at a lot of the different lineups and how often they were duplicated. There was a Lamar Jackson MVP lineup. Lamar Jackson in that game was 70% owned as the MVP, so even more than he was going to be owned in this game. 70% MVP. There were 2 lineups that finished in the top, 1 or 2% of that contest. And this contest had 39,000 entries compared to tonight. What it has 265,000 entries. So in that contest, just 39,000 entries, there was 2 Lamar lineups in the top 1%, and they both used 58,500 of the $60,000 salary cap, so they left $1,500 left over. The one used a 0.6 owned player in their 5th and final spot, so it's likely a 5K, 5.5K, 6K player, a wide receiver 4 or 5, a tight end 2 or 3 that barely gets used. That lineup had 0 duplicates in that entire contest because they used a less than 1% owned player. And these types of players end up in the optimal lineups more often than you think, especially on slates like this where there's top-heavy salaries. If one of these tight ends catches a touchdown, one of these wide receiver 3 or 4 catches a touchdown, a backup running back gets a touchdown, it can happen. 0 duplicates for that lineup. Now, if you look at a lineup that used the same amount of salary with Lamar and MVP, but didn't use a 1% owned player, it was duplicated 70 times. That's the big difference. And duplicates go down the less salary you use. So there's your answer. Either use a 1% owned player and or leave more salary on the table if you decide to use Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes at your MVP spot in FanDuel tournaments. 100-player leagues, you don't have to leave as much. Again, we say that's the most optimal contest type. You don't have to leave as much salary there. If you're playing the big tournaments, you'll have to get unique. And there's 2 ways to do it. We just detailed those. Now, go over the DraftKings. It's gonna be a funny slate. Let's pull this up here. And if we look, this is just a random placeholder lineup. Please don't use this lineup. This is my placeholder lineup. I'm gonna edit my lineups later. I don't want people jamming this lineup in and then deciding and then coming back and flaming me in the comments for using this lineup. It's not a real lineup. Don't use it. So if we look at this game from last year, Lamar and Patrick Mahomes were like 80% owned in the Showdown contest. It doesn't matter. their prices could be 20K. People are going to jam them into the lineups because of their projections, because of who they are. So vast majority of people are going to click here, and then try to figure out the rest. Just facts of life. Lamar, if we go to our Occupy model, similar breakdowns, just lower ownership because of the way the captain spot is set up. Lamar, 31% projected captain spots. Mahomes, 23% projected in the captain spot. But again, 47% flex, 56% flex. Yeah, it's like 80 to 90 overall. As a result, we see a lot of wide receiver twos, a lot of tight ends, and surprisingly, kickers. In this game last year, Justin Tucker was 40% owned. Even it's like 2% captain. Harrison Butker was 33% owned. I think we can see a similar phenomenon tonight where a lot of people just try to jam in these two quarterbacks and then play either one of or both Tucker and Butker. Like, people will definitely do this. As a result, we need to look for players around Tucker and Butker that could potentially outscore them. Whether that's guys like Miles Boykin, Demarcus Robinson, Willie Snead, Mecole Hardman higher up. The defenses are going to go way lower owned in a high total game. Those are your options to get around these kickers because they're going to be very popular because the field does what it does. It's really interesting to say the least. So, a couple options here. If you're playing smaller contests, or you're playing a couple lineups, you're like, I think Lamar or Mahomes is definitely the optimal MVP or captain, hands down. I don't see any other way. So if that's the case, play Lamar in the captain spot, dummy, and then get one or maybe two of his pass catchers, right? Because if Lamar crushes enough at his price tag, he's got to like completely go off in this game. Same with Mahomes. Mahomes, get maybe three of his pass catchers. And this point was brought on by Colin Drew, who we did the premium podcast with this morning. It's posted in our daily plug. It's posted in our members dashboard. Colin talked about if he used Mahomes at captain, he might use three pass catchers because Mahomes doesn't run as much as Lamar, obviously. And if he has a big enough game at his salary, that means a lot of players are coming along for the ride, as Colin likes to say. So we have to get two, probably three Chiefs pass catchers in the mix. Now, they don't have to be Tyreek, CEH, Kelsey. It could be Tyreek, DeMarcus, I don't know, Darrell Williams. Doesn't necessarily have to be the three studs, but three Chiefs players. The alternative is playing some of these mid-range captains and fitting in more studs. So let's just say if we did someone like, let's just say Mark Ingram, for example. This gives us the ability to fit in, three of the top studs here and not have a completely terrible lineup. Something like this, punt play. And if you go even lower, let's just say, and again, we don't expect these players to be the highest scoring captains. But let's just say Miles Boykin, who's running a ton of routes for the Ravens, their number 2 receiver. Let's say we put him at captain. That leaves us $89.80 per player. Like, there's a lot of things we can do here. I mean, we can get 4 players above 8K in our flex spot. So it's an interesting slate. I'm glad they made this $1 million slate because there are a lot of decisions to be made. For our full thoughts, and I'm going to fully flesh out lineup strategies for both FanDuel and DraftKings in our daily plug, occupyfantasy.com. Links in the description. Go check it out after this video and get our full thoughts. Also, write-ups on every single player to let you know how much to use them in your lineups if you're making more than one, and if you want to fade them or use them if you're making just one lineup. Again, occupyfantasy.com is where you can get that. The Occupy model's up and running, got the projected ownership and the rankings for FanDuel and DraftKings for every player on the slate. And again, check out our premium podcast, get my thoughts and Colin's thoughts. Colin's had a bunch of showdown wins in addition to my $1 million showdown win. So two big brains working on showdown in one podcast. Go check it out. All right, final request, click that subscribe button. That way you get access to all of our videos. Give us a thumbs up to let us know to keep making more of these videos. And any questions you have, hop in the comments. By the time this video is posted, we'll have about 8 hours until lock. So plenty of time to answer your questions. We'll answer them before the game starts. All right, Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate you listening. Good luck tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.